Now, more of Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute, the only show directly addressing the problems and solutions for Illinois. Now, from AM 560, here's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Pat Hughes, co-founder of the Illinois Opportunity Project, illinoisopportunity.org. And Pat, oral arguments heard this week before the United States Supreme Court in the case of Friedrichs v. California Teachers Association. This is about fair share dues and essentially forced unionization in the public sector, kind of building, frankly, off the Harris v. Quinn case, an Illinois case that was adjudicated by the court in favor of Pam Harris and other families that the SEIU, Service Employees Union, was trying to force into the union because they received a stipend from the state to care for their developmentally disabled children. The SEIU wanted to force those parents into their union to be represented against their children. This is how silly it becomes in the public sector. And Rebecca Friedrichs, this teacher, thinks it's silly that she should be forced to pay fair share dues to a union that she doesn't want to belong to, and she doesn't want to have represent her.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't even belong to the union, right? They're just forcing her to pay what are called fair share fees. The union argues that, because they're collectively bargaining on her behalf, she's free riding on whatever benefits come from that contract. But the reality of it is that Friedrichs and people like her who don't want to be part of the union, they want to go and negotiate on their own. I mean, God forbid a teacher went to the school board and said, this is what I'd like to get paid, or this is what I'd like my circumstances to be. And, forcing people to pay these fees was in front of the Supreme Court because it's a violation of their First Amendment rights to free association and free speech. Free association because you shouldn't be forced to be part of a group that you don't want to be part of under the First Amendment, and freedom of speech because the money, Dan, that goes to these fair share dues is going to political speech. Everything a public sector union does in collective bargaining is political speech. And the justices, at least the 5 conservative ones, were talking in those terms on Monday. My guess is they're going to overrule their prior decision, the Abood decision, and rule that collecting these fees is unconstitutional, which would be ostensibly an end to forced unionization and public sector unionization as we know it.
And that case will be, that opinion you're describing will be rendered by the end of June.
Yeah, it'll be this summer.
And the implications are serious, existential, frankly, for public sector unions. We saw this in Wisconsin where you didn't have to be a member of the teachers union anymore. You could choose. And the Wisconsin, the WEA, the Wisconsin Education Association, the teacher union there, saw their membership drop by 40% overnight.
Well, sure, because the folks realize that they're not getting anything for their money. I saw one report that it would be for a teacher be $1,000 a year in fair share dues. They'd rather keep that money and spend it. And what's going to happen, the consequence of this is dire for public sector unions, especially in Illinois, where they play such a huge role in getting legislators and other politicians elected, is that the money that they'll have to operate campaigns through Mike Madigan's political machine is going to decrease substantially. And that puts Madigan and Cullerton in a very difficult position against Governor Rauner, whose money comes from private individuals and private donations.
You were on Chicago Tonight this week to discuss this issue.
I looked great, by the way.
Yes, dashing. Phil Ponce refereed. It was you and Dan Montgomery, who's the president of the Illinois Federation of Teachers. And let's listen to an exchange. First, we'll hear from Dan Montgomery, and then we'll hear from the aforesaid Pat Hughes, and you decide which, if either of them, are making any sense.
As I said, conservative courts in the United States have held that to be the case for decades. These cases that are being tried now are run by far right-wing groups funded by billionaires like the Koch brothers who are set out. It's not really a free speech issue for them. It's an effort to destroy unions and the ability of working people to speak collectively.
Pat Hughes, how about that? Because that's one of the raps against the efforts on the part of these teachers, that it's really part of a larger scheme to overall weaken unions. Your response?
I don't agree with that. I think that if someone wants to be a member of the union, God bless them. They should be a member of the union. But if they don't want to be, if they want to negotiate on their own behalf and still work for the government, they should be able to do that outside of the union. And that's all these plaintiffs are asking for. They're asking for their individual liberty, their First Amendment rights to be able to do that outside the union. It's interesting that the union feels the need to coerce these folks to pay dues that they don't want to pay and to be represented in a manner that they don't want to be represented. These plaintiffs would rather negotiate on their own behalf, work with the state on their own behalf and not be represented by the union or be forced to be affiliated with the union. And what's wrong with that, Phil? This is America. You shouldn't be forced to associate with a group you don't want to associate with, and that's what's going on here.
Quick response, Dan.
Yeah. Well, no one is coerced and no one is forced to do this. People have freedom.
But they are. But people do have to pay the union dues, even if they don't belong to the union.
I mean, that's why it's called fair share. This is, I don't think you would advocate forcing United Airlines to give away tickets for free and say, well, people shouldn't have to pay for it, right?
Well, you did a pretty good job there because Phil Ponce seemed to be on your side, which is impressive. I don't understand the United Airlines analogy we just heard. So, if you don't want to fly United Airlines, then you don't purchase a ticket. And if you don't fly United Airlines, you don't have to pay for a ticket you didn't use. So I don't understand the comparison between buying a ticket to fly United Airlines and being forced to pay fair share dues to a union to which you don't belong.
Yeah, that's because there isn't one. What happened with Dan in that circumstance is when you have an indefensible position. I mean, his position is basically, I want the money. That's his position. And it's indefensible from a legal perspective and, frankly, from a moral perspective. And so you're left flailing with examples that make no sense. And unfortunately for him, that's what happened.
And boogeymen, too. It's that's the vast right-wing conspiracy.
Sure.
It's the Koch brothers.
I'm waiting for my first Koch brothers donation.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep getting,
And I am too, and frankly, I would welcome it.
I would too.